Please welcome to the stage, City of Everett Mayor Cassie Franklin.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight and join all of you and talk about something I'm pretty passionate about, which is public safety. So I thought I'd talk just a little bit about the crime crisis, why I think a bipartisan or nonpartisan approach is most important, and what I think we need to see from the state of Washington. So first, Mayor of Everett, Washington. It's a beautiful city. There's a lot of good going on. We've opened Payne Field. We've been welcoming next generation businesses, seeing our city open back up post-COVID with lots of events and activities. But we're also seeing an unprecedented rise in violent crime and gun violence and people dying on our streets every day from the fentanyl crisis. This is something I take really seriously, not just as mayor. Public safety needs to be our #1 priority. It's my duty to keep our community safe. But I'm also the mom of a 14-year-old middle schooler, and I worry about her and her friends every day. When I send her to school, I never thought I'd have to tell my daughter not to take an Advil or a Midol or anything from a friend because it might be laced with fentanyl. So before I get into addressing those challenges, I want to talk a little bit about nonpartisanship or bipartisanship. Public safety is not a partisan issue. Just like potholes, parks, transportation, all the things we do in local government is actually everyone should care equally about. In Snohomish County, I feel really lucky. We have some really great collaborative leaders. I always talk about mayors don't see parties. We are the party of getting stuff done. So we don't really care whether you have an R or a D, and I know we might have some R's in here. I happen to be a D, so thank you for having me. But public safety is really an important issue, and it's critical that we bring all those voices to the table to solve the challenges we have, because we have huge challenges in this state. And if we're not listening to all the voices and all the potential solutions, we're not going to get it right. So like many communities, Everett has been dealing with the opioid crisis. In fact, we were the first city to sue the opioid manufacturer. And thank you. That's clapworthy. But in recent years, open public drug use has become much more prevalent. And what I get frustrated with is there's this sense of urgency that we all, then when we walk our streets, and the mayors and local government, we have this sense of urgency because we're seeing people die on the streets. I was recently in DC, and I was talking about this, and it's like, well, you're talking about a war on drugs. I'm like, no, I'm not talking about a war on drugs. I'm talking about people dying every day on our streets and actually impacting everyone around them. This is a very different crisis than anything we've seen in the past. We're seeing damage at storefronts, litter all over our communities, in our schoolyards, evidence of fentanyl use and drug paraphernalia. And we've limited law enforcement's ability to address this issue. We have to offer people help multiple times, but when you're asking someone if they want help and they're incredibly high, they're not going to accept services. And when folks talk about, well, they need to want to accept services to get treatment, well, for fentanyl, rock bottom is death. So that's not acceptable. And for me, it's not safe or compassionate to allow those people to live outside without the help and support that they need. It's not safe for them, and it's not safe for the rest of our community. So in Snohomish County, to address this, the mayors got together and said, we aren't seeing what we need to see at the state level, so we're going to work together across party lines, and we formed a Mayors for and Business Leaders for Public Safety Coalition. 16 mayors of Snohomish County, led by myself, Mayor Nearing of Marysville, Mayor Witta of Sultan, and Mayor Gailey of Lake Stevens, brought together all of our voices and said, look, we've got to address some of these major issues we're seeing. We want to address the police pursuits. We want to address the Blake decision. We want to see some action from the state to balance accountability and enforcement with treatment and compassion. And I think we can accomplish all of that. So that's what we set out to do. And part of that, I think, is understanding that our state does not have the solutions right now. We do not have the treatment centers we need, and it's going to take decades to get the treatment centers we need. So in the meantime, one of the best treatment centers we have is our jail system. And that sounds very harsh, but guess what? In jail, I can keep people alive. When we get somebody off the streets and into jail, they're getting medically assisted treatment, Suboxone, they're getting medical care, they're detoxing, and that may provide them just the lifeline they need by the time they're out a few days later to actually readily engage in treatment. And so we've tried to help our legislature, our state leaders understand that. We also tried to help them understand that our local jurisdictions need some flexibility. What works in Seattle might not be the same thing that works in Darrington. What works in Everett might not be the same thing that works in Bellevue. We, as local leaders, know our community, see the needs every day, and we want the support there to bring the systems in that work for our communities. The last thing I think that we wanted to really advocate for was support for law enforcement. It's sad that Washington State has become one of the most difficult places in the nation to be a police officer. Our police officers are overwhelmed. They're overworked, they're underpaid, and this is one of the most difficult places to recruit officers. We are losing officers to other states all across the country. And I think that we, as a community, need to prioritize how do we make the state of Washington the best place to be a police officer again? How do we show our officers that this is a place that they want to work and where people want to come to Washington State to be a police officer? So there was a lot of work in the legislature this year. We did finally see a Blake fix at the end of session, their special session. You know, I'll honestly say it's better than what existed before. It obviously makes possession and public use gross misdemeanors. It reviews the requirement to offer multiple treatment. Those are both positive things. A couple of concerns we have was the preemption of possession of drug paraphernalia, meaning we can't arrest somebody who has a bunch of drug paraphernalia. There's no mandatory jail minimums and no accountability to complete treatment. So that what that could create again is a revolving door. And it doesn't solve the officer presence rule, meaning our officers have to witness drug use and drug possession in order to arrest. So as mayors, we're gonna do what we can and implement these rules that have come. And if they're not working, we're gonna continue to advocate to the state for what we need to see. But I wanna be clear, it's not just drug possession that is a challenge in this state. We need more treatment. Obviously, this is the way out of the drug crisis. We need to increase transparency into how we're spending our money on homelessness, behavioral health, and how we make those programs more effective. And we need transparency into our criminal justice system. We need to look at what our sentencing legislation is, and are we setting the right range, or are we allowing people immediately back out on the street? Again, that's the balance of accountability and compassion. Couple of things that I'm very concerned about, and I know our mayor's group is going to continue to focus on, is how we prioritize the unlawful possession of firearm cases and other dangerous crimes as we're working through the systems that need to be improved in the state. And again, the support for our law enforcement officers, the changes that are necessary so that they can do their jobs. And honestly, all of the officers I know, they're doing this because they want to help people. They want to protect us, and they want to keep our communities safe. So I think he's telling me it's time. They're gonna start cutting me off. I just want you to know that your local cities are doing what they can. They are putting the systems in place, and you've got great mayors all across this state that are working together to address these challenges. So thank you for allowing me to be here and join you tonight.